Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. So here's a video, a follow-up on the previous first impressions about the control of Commander moving to Wizards of the Coast, and then their announcement of a bracket system to assist in matchmaking, deck building and matchmaking. There are lots of angles to look at Magic the Gathering from what's happened, the last 2-3 weeks. But more than anything else, the upcoming bracket system is what interests me, so let's do a video based on that. In that earlier video, I did give some first impressions, some first thoughts, but I've sat on that for a while, and I've watched some other videos from other folks that had ideas on the brackets, and now I have probably my most finalized thoughts before Wizards of the Coast releases more details. And in the background, I will play the Stacks version of my Riga Stadium deck. It's going to be interesting to see which Stacks pieces fall into which brackets, and for the moment I'm kind of holding off on buying cards and then building decks until I see what is more announced, more details on that. But yeah, I think I said this before, I like the idea of brackets. With a more defined structure and then different card pools, I feel like deck building is going to be easier and more directed, and for that reason Rule 0 should be easier as well. In fact, a lot of the heavy lifting of Rule 0 is going to be moved into the deck building phase, which we will do before we go to the store or wherever it is, and then hopefully modifying our deck after we go to the store will happen much less. Rather than just, showing up at the store with random decks and then kind of talking to people to choose decks or even to modify decks that they would be comparable in power level to each other, we can all just aim at a power level at the deck building phase, and then when we show up, there should be less needed talk or compromise. I've been looking at a lot of the talk surrounding this announcement, and one thing I see is folks talking about bracket 2.5 or high bracket 3 versus low bracket 3, and I'm like, no, this is not what this bracket system is trying to do. It's trying to simplify things. In the future, there may be more granularity, like even individual card point values like in Warhammer, but for now, I don't think that's the aim. This is a new system, so it's going to start simple and then go from there. Related to this is the idea of the highest bracket level card determining the deck's bracket level. I see outcry over this, and I can see this changing in the future, but for now, for simplicity's sake, I think this is the right move. Is it an imperfect way to grade a deck? Yes. Does it cover all possibilities fairly? No. But it gets people used to the idea of building towards a standard and replacing powerful cards with cards that do something similar, but not as well or as quickly. As an initial step, it's not very graceful, but it will get the job done. One of the most ridiculous takes I saw was the fear that people would use the bracket system to police and exclude other players. The example they gave was, what if I go to a store and I only have bracket 3 decks, and the people at the store are all playing bracket 2 decks, and they say they won't play with me and make me feel bad about the cards I included. I'm sorry, but that person is just underprepared. Why don't they have decks of other bracket levels? Why don't they have cards to change out to alter the bracket level of their decks? Would they complain about going to a store with only modern decks and then discovering everyone is playing standard and accusing them of policing? That is just ridiculous. I think it's a bad faith take that is trying really hard to shoot down the bracket system. But I think looking overall, looking at the comments section, I think the majority is kind of on the same page that I am on, which is encouraging. It seems like more of the bigger voices don't like it, while the general public does like it. There was recently a player survey on Reddit where they kind of ranked cards, and they thought about which brackets each card would fall in, and I agreed with those for the most part. Not that I'm any expert, I'm still new to the game. But I feel like I already have a good handle of what Wizards of the Coast is aiming for each bracket, and it seems that most people do as well. But yeah, I think that the rankings, where different cards should go in the different brackets, should hinge around certain categories of high-powered cards, namely mana-positive rocks, game-winning combos, tutors, mass land destruction, stacks, pitch spells, and powerful engines that either get you extra draw or extra mana. So bracket 4 would include all of that stuff, or most of that stuff, while bracket 3 would have more kind of fair rocks and lands, maybe expensive to cast or difficult to play game-winning combos, light stacks, less than top-tier draw or mana engines. While bracket 1, the lowest, would maybe include no game-winning combos, only like very expensive tutors, no land destruction, no stacks, no tax, no pitch spells, and then a lot of spells for like one-time draw or rituals for one-time mana. Also in the Wizards of the Coast livestream, they talked about Sol Ring. They called it kind of an unofficial like bracket 0 or something, but really it's bracket 1. It's allowed everywhere. And I saw a lot of outcry about that too, since it does something similar to Mana Crypt, which would almost certainly be a bracket 4 card. But the issue is not that they do similar things. The issue is that there's too much redundancy of what they do, of that effect. Having one Sol Ring type of fast mana effect per deck I think is fine. They also think it's fine, even in the lowest bracket decks. What it will do is that once in a while it will give someone an explosive start, which can be fun, and then give like a lower skilled player a better chance against a higher skilled player. It's when effects like this have too high of a chance of happening, or when they have a chance of happening together to sort of like compound on each other, then that becomes a problem. That's why one Sol Ring is okay, and multiples of that effect are not. That's how I interpret it, anyway. I also saw a lot of people saying they were confused why the developer said that Arcane Signet was a mistake. It's a fair price for what it does, and it's not mana positive. The problem with Arcane Signet is that it's too perfect. It is an auto-include in nearly every deck, and there's no fair way to design a better 2-mana rock. They will probably never make a 1-mana rock that will do the same thing, and they will probably never make a 2-mana rock that makes, 2 of the colored mana. Players love it because it's so good, but designers don't like it because it reduces deck building variety and leaves them no design space in that area. Lately I've been seeing more mana rocks, different designs in the 3 cost area, just because in 2, there's kind of nothing that they can do anymore. Galadriel's File from the Lord of the Rings set is a good example of that. Also, as far as putting cards into the brackets, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle commanders. I think commanders that cost less or have ways around commander tax will go in higher brackets, and then commanders that are like draw engines or mana engines or tutors will also be rated higher. And then like Yuriko is very cheap to cast, and then she can enable all kinds of things, so she'll be at least bracket 3, I think. My prediction is that my favorite commander, my weak little Rigo, will be bracket 1 because he's mostly forgotten. Although, he is a pretty good draw engine, which might be the best case to put him in a higher bracket. So, assuming that the bracket lists end up like this, I'm now reconsidering my decks. And I'm glad for the structure because I really felt in deck building up to now that I was falling down an empty elevator shaft, just kind of like researching good cards and randomly putting in my decks. And then when I go to my local game store, there's never a Rule 0 conversation, so I've been spending more time just kind of watching my opponents and then gauging their power levels, rather than actually trying to win. With the bracket system, I feel like a Rule 0 conversation is going to be more likely to happen, even if it's just like asking, what bracket is your deck? Mine's a 2, mine's a 3, okay, I'll change mine, something like that. If that were to happen, then I would have to just kind of worry less about being at the same level as the other players. So as far as what exactly I want to adjust about my decks, I want a variety of power level decks so that wherever I go, whomever I join, I can have a deck to play with a level that they're all going to agree on. I'm working on a mono black Endrick San Aristocrats deck, which I want to be bracket 1, the weakest. In there now, I have like Bolas' Citadel and Necropotence. I'm probably going to have to take those out. Maybe take out like pitch removal spells, maybe Dark Ritual. But other than that, I think I can probably keep most of the cards that I put into that deck. Of all of my decks, it's probably the closest to Tier 1. So that's why I picked it for there. Should take the least amount of adjustment. For my bracket 2 deck, I think I want to do my mono red Subira deck. There I'm going to have to take out, game-winning combos like Kiki-Jiki and Goblin Recruiter. explosive cards like Jessica's Will and Underworld Breach, but hopefully everything else, the little creatures and then the group slug effects, will pass for Bracket 2. And then for Bracket 3, I want to go with my Rigo Stadium deck here. The Stadium win condition is not a strong winning strategy, but I can use most if not all of my strongest cards, and hopefully stand a chance of winning. Maybe the strongest counterspells I'll have to cut, like Fierce Guardianship and Mana Drain. I think all the engines I have in there now can stay, like Exploration, Carpet of Flowers, Mystic Remora, Esper Sentinel. And then I have some like legendary creatures in there, kind of like as like sub-commanders, like Delny or Chulane. They'll probably make it in Tier 3. And yeah, again, I'm going to be interested to see the breakdown of how Stacks cards fall into Brackets 3 or 4. But I'm probably going to want to rely on those so that I can go for my slow and bad Stadium win. But yeah, the one of the cards that they've revealed so far is Draneth Magistrate, which is absolutely one of the stronger Stacks pieces. That's in Bracket 3, not in 4. So I may be able to get away with all of the Stacks pieces that I have lined up now anyway. None of them are hard Stacks pieces like Stasis or Armageddon or something. And then for Bracket 4, I have no immediate plans to make such a deck, because I have no plans to play at that power level. I don't want to spend big bucks on cards, and I don't want to proxy. And so any cards that I happen to have that fall into that category will be essentially unusable in any of my decks. And I'm okay with that. I'll just hang on to them in case I want to play at Bracket 4 in the future, or if those cards get moved down in the future. And I do expect cards to get shifted from bracket to bracket based on performance and feedback and all that. But yeah, I'm super excited about the upcoming bracket system. When they do release the list of cards that are like, appropriate for each bracket, might be fun to do a video to look at those, and then also talking about how I'm going to adjust my decks to fit in those different brackets. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.